All right, so after reading the directions on this review, you guys determined pretty quickly that number 1 was an ellipse. And I agree with you wholeheartedly. Okay, a lot of you are saying circle for 2. It's not, with circles, we didn't have these numbers in front, so we would divide by 6. And since it's the same number in front of x squared and y squared, that's how I know that that's a circle. Okay, let me give you a for instance. If this had been a 6 right here, but over in front of x squared had been any other number besides 6, it would have been an ellipse. And what would we have divided by in that case? What do we want 54? Because in an ellipse, we want it to equal 1. Okay, so that's the difference. And I see a lot of you have your blue cards out. That's great. Have those ready to go, because you're going to get to use that on the quiz. All right, so yeah, because you're going to use a different one on the quiz. So the blue sheet, well, you can make notes, but you're going to use like my copy of that on the quiz. So first things first, center. What's the center of number 1?
3, 2.
3, 2. We feel pretty good about that. If the center's off, everything else is going to be off. So you do need to be careful. I know this is a tiny, tiny grid, but we're going to do the best that we can with it. Okay. Then it says, okay, now we got to find the vertices, the co-vertices, and the foci or focus points, however you want to say that. All right. Now, which one of these numbers down here is a squared?
25.
How do you know that? It's the bigger number. So then that means that a is 5 and b is 4. And the number in front of x tells me to go left and right. And the fact that that's the bigger number tells me that those are the vertices. Now, if you can find the vertices just by adding and subtracting 5 to the x value, you could do that. Just add 5 to the 3. If this is confusing you, then you may not want to do that. You may want to graph it and then figure it out. If the directions say to graph, then the graph is going to be part of your answer. If it doesn't say graph, then the graph really is just there to help you. So there's the vertices. Okay, what direction and by how much am I going to go for the co-vertices? 4 in what direction? Up and down. How do we know we're going to go up and down for those? Because it's underneath the y, right? So I'm going to go down 4 and up 4. And you can either use that grid, or you could think, okay, I'm going to add 4 to the y value, and then I'm going to subtract 4. And then if you wanted to make a graph, you could. We don't really have to on this one because it's not really in the directions. It's just there to help us. Okay. We haven't done this. We didn't do a whole lot of this on day 2 ellipses. So for the focus, we need to use that formula. C squared equals a squared minus b squared. It's on your formula chart. So we need to find C. So it's going to be 25 minus 16. You need to be able to do all this math without a calculator. That's 9. So if C is 3, the only thing you got to decide now is which direction do I need to go? Up and down or left and right? Why left and right? Because it's along the vertices. We call it the major axis. So I'm going to add 3 to the 6, and then I'm going to subtract 3. Okay, remember circles were a little bit easier. And if you need to graph to do this, you can. But I'm thinking probably most of us don't need to graph to figure out the center, which is how much? 0, 0. And the radius is 3. Okay, you square root that number. That's r squared. Sometimes after doing ellipses, some people get confused when they're doing circles. So if your phone is distracting you right now, then you need to put it away for the rest of the review. All right, now, okay, the center is 0, 0 because it's not like x minus a number in parentheses. Like, see how it was up here? There were no numbers there. So we get to call that 0. Yeah, like, if the problem had looked like this, then we would say the center was 1, negative 2. But since there were no numbers, there were like zeros there. Okay, so look at the directions on 3 to 4. Okay, again, we're supposed to decide if this is a circle or an ellipse. And that's important because depending upon how we do the problem, I mean, we're going to do it a little bit differently, the whole dividing thing. So look at the 4x squared and the 3y squared. That information alone tells you which thing this is. Anybody know? They're different, so it's an ellipse. Very good. If those had both been 4s or both been 3s, then we would call that a circle. So look at number 4. And notice what I'm underlining here. Just the x squared and the y squared terms. So what is number 4? A circle. Now you kind of approach these problems a little bit differently depending upon which one it is. Okay, I'm going to actually do the circle one first. With the circle, the number's the same here, and I don't want that number there at all. So what can I do to get rid of that 2? Just divide everything across the board by 2. So you end up getting x squared plus y squared plus 6x. And then we know we need to do something else here, but for now, this is what we have. I'll come back to the ellipse in a minute. I just feel like it naturally goes to do this one first. What's overall what I need to do next? Like, what needs to go next after x squared? The plus 6x. I need to get the x's together. I need to leave a little bit of space. And I need to get the y's together. Leave a little bit of space. And this plus 5, what needs to happen to that? Subtract it over to the other side. If you're like, Miss Brooks, I know how to do all of this, you are in really good shape for the quiz. If you're thinking, ooh, I forgot a lot of this, well then it's a good thing we're reviewing. And if you want to work a little bit ahead of where I'm at, that's totally fine with me. So this 6, that's what we're going to do completing the square with. We're going to half it, box it, square it. So we add 9. And with circles, it was really easy. We didn't have a lot of parentheses. We didn't have parentheses like how we do in ellipses. That's why I'm doing this one first. Always on a quiz, you don't have to go in the order of the quiz. Do the ones that are easier first. Then I'm going to do the same thing with the negative 8. Half it, box it, square it. How are we feeling about completing the square today versus earlier in the week? Better? Good? Not good? Hopefully at least better than Monday. Okay, now we are going to have parentheses here. And what number goes here? The number from the box. It's a positive 3, so we write plus 3. And then next to the y goes the number in the box. Now you do need to make sure that you can add and subtract these up.
Wait, why did you add the plus 9 and plus 16 on both sides?
Well, you got it. This equal sign means basically these two things weigh the same amount. And if I just drop 9 pounds on the left, they don't weigh the same amount anymore. But if I drop 9 pounds on the right, then they do still equal each other. They're the same. So you have to balance it out. So what is negative 5 plus 9? 4 plus 16 is 20. And this is the standard form for a circle. It's on your blue card if you forget. So go ahead and write down the center and the radius on your paper.
So would you want it to be r squared?
Well, this is r squared. It's not a perfect square, but it's still r squared. So how do we deal with that?
Can you just put square root 20? Or do you need like
How is it r squared?
Well, any number could be r squared. I mean, 17.93 could be r squared. So, the center, let's just get that out of the way. That's negative 3/4. Are we all in agreement on that?
Yeah.
Okay, if r squared is 20, and we square root both sides, we don't need a plus minus, by the way, because this is an actual thing. A negative radius wouldn't make sense. So it's square root of 20. Now, if you can simplify that, you need to do that. If not, if you're not sure how to simplify that, it would be better for you to write the unsimplified answer than mess up. But if you remember, we just think, okay, what's a perfect square that goes in? We can square root 4 to get 2, and then square root of 5. Yeah. If you are like, I don't know how to do that, then just write square root of 20. And you may get the whole credit, or you may get dinged like 1 point. Okay. All right, so that's a circle. Ellipses are a little bit different, mostly because in the end, I want it to equal 1. And like here, it wouldn't make sense to divide everything by 4. Because what would happen if I did try to divide everything by 4? What would happen right here with this 3? You'd get like this weird fraction, and it would just become more and more and more complicated. Okay, so this is where we go ahead and leave that number. We're still going to get the x's together and the y's together, and we're still going to subtract over that other number. But before I complete the square, I need to factor out the 4. And you do 32 divided by 4, which would be 8. And so what we do completing the square with is this negative 8, not negative 32.
Take out 4x and
Even though you could factor out 4x, you don't want to, because we're not really factoring here. We're doing completing the square. So don't do that, basically. Okay, so 16 completes the square. Now this was the next part that throws students off, and so I want to review this really good.
So, all you did from the 4x squared minus 32x
Mhm.
on the greatest common factor.
Really, it's not even just greatest common factor. You're going to factor out the number in front of x squared.
So you need x squared.
You need, to do completing the square, you just need x squared by itself with no number in front of it. Okay, like going back to that whole balancing scale thing, did I drop 16 pounds on the left? I did, but it's in parentheses being multiplied to some number, so how many pounds is that really? 4 times 16. Remember, the trick to doing times 4 is just times 2 times 2. That's 64, so we're going to add 64 to the right to keep everything balanced. Okay, and I'm going to do the same thing with the y's. You either do it on your own or follow along, but I'm not going to talk through this one because I want y'all to try this one on your own. But if you need a hint, look up at the board. Okay, so plus 12 is the number you should have gotten on the right side. I got that because I put in a plus 4, but it was really a plus 4 times 3, so plus 12. So now I'm ready to go ahead and claim the boxes. I'm just getting these numbers from over there in the boxes. And I like it when we got a negative and a plus. That makes the number crunching easier. Now with the circle, it was totally fine to have a big number over here. But with ellipses, what number do we want on the right side?
0.
A 1. Okay, so we need to divide by 12. I'm going to actually write the answer over here so I can still write it big. So this part kind of causes some people anxiety. Don't really worry about it. It's going to be fine. Just divide those two numbers and write that new number in the denominator. Okay, same thing over here. All right, the directions do say to find the center. We need to go back and do that on the circle problem. So what's the center in this problem? 4, negative 2. Now, if you did completing the square wrong, probably your center is also wrong. But hopefully you will have nice teachers, or in this, y'all's case, Miss Brooks, to grade through.
Is there a way to check that?
There is a way to check it, but I'm telling you it's a lot more work than it's worth. It's easier actually just to redo the problem. All right, so, oh, we did find the center.
Yeah.
Never mind. What am I thinking? Okay. All right. I'm actually going to let you guys have a little bit of time to try these on your own. And then I'm going to go over them in a few minutes. So go ahead and try to do as many as you can on your own. We're not skipping any on this. We're going to do all of them. No, I do not. Oh. All right, so number 5, we had a circle. Okay, the center was 3, 0, so we're going to go x minus 3 squared. If you want to write y minus 0 squared, that's fine, but you could also just write y squared. Either one's fine. Now, we got to write whatever 3 root 2 squared is. So over here, I'm actually going to do it like this, because squaring is the same thing as multiplying by itself. So I'm going to do 3 times 3, which is 9, root 2 times root 2, which is 2. So equals 18. Okay, remember you're not going to get to use a calculator, so you need to be able to do that without. Okay, number 6. The center is 4, 2, so we know we definitely have this much. So even if you only know how to do the center, you can still get a whole lot of points for just doing this. Now to do everything else, it kind of helps if you graph it. Okay, so like over here, 4, 2, and then 6, 2 is the co-vertex. So that tells me right there that B equals 2, and it's right and left. So underneath the x should be B squared or 2 squared. I'm trying to make it where you can see both parts. Okay, there's a focus at 4, 5. So that's going to be 3 above. So that's C. C equals 3, because the point 4, 5 is 3 units above 4, 2. So now we got to use this formula to figure out what A squared equals. So C squared is 9, A squared is what we're looking for, B squared we already knew is 4. So it's just an algebra thing at this point. Add the 4 over and you get 13, which is really weird. It's a weird number, but we don't have to do anything with it. We just write it and move on with our life. Okay, number 7 is a circle again. If this whole flipping back and forth between circles and ellipses is not for you, what should you do on the quiz? Do all the circles, then go back and do all the ellipses. That's honestly what I would do if I was working the quiz. Okay. The center, I think y'all feel pretty good about. This whole tangent to, we haven't talked about that in a few days. If we graph, 1, 2, 3, oh, my eyesight used to be so good. It is very small. Okay, so that means that the circle looks something like this. My computer screen goes black, and that's all I can see is the projector. So what's that radius? So the distance between -3 and 2 would be 5. So if the radius is 5, then we're going to write equals 25. Okay, I'm going to slow down for a minute on number 8 because 8 was weird. How many of you got to 8 and you were like, what? I'll skip this. Okay, so we know this is a circle. They tell us that, but let's just go ahead and let's set it up. Okay, 3 is an odd number, but we got to go with it. It doesn't half nicely. But again, we don't have a choice. And if I square that, I'm going to get positive 9 over 4. Again, not ideal, but it's what we have. And that means I have to add 9/4 to the right side. And then do the same thing with -8. Okay, just so I have plenty of room over here, I'm going to actually erase that stuff. That was just the work behind the whole half it, box it, square it. Okay, now, if you're going to add fractions, you've got to get these in terms of 4. So 10 would become 40 over 4. What would 16 become? 16 times 4. 64. So this number over here, -40. Here's how I think about it. I think about 64 minus 40. What's that? 24. And then add a 9 and you get 33. That's, if you're having trouble with the number crunching, that may be what you want to do. I erased my boxes, but this is what they had. Okay, now the center part is weird, but not too bad. What about the radius? Yeah, just square root the top number, square root the bottom number. Square root of 33 isn't anything. But square root of 4 is 2, and so that would be how you want to write that. That's how you do that without a calculator, which is going to be the case at the quiz. All right, so I'm going to go through the completing the square process on 9 one more time, but I'm going to go through it kind of quicker than I did the other ones. Okay, this is an ellipse, so we're not dividing anything at the beginning. We're just going to go ahead and get the x's together, get the y's together. Always make sure the squared, like the x or y squared, is first. Now I'm going to factor out the 9. And with the 6, we're going to go half it, box it, square it. So what am I adding to the other side? This is a plus 9 here. Plus 81. I'm going to factor out the 4. At least I don't have any odd numbers to deal with here. Half it, box it, square it. So there's a plus 1, but it's in parentheses to a 4, so I'm going to go plus 4. What does all this stuff on the right add up to?
34.
We got a 34. Any others? You're really close. 36, which is actually way better, because 34 would be kind of rough to work with. I will tell you, it is very common that these two numbers multiplied is what that number is. It doesn't have to be that way, but it is pretty common. We're going to divide by 36. And remember, just divide those two numbers and put that new number down below. So 36 divided by 9, that's 4. Okay, y minus 1 squared, that's going to be a 9. Okay, and I'm going to pause really quick and let you try to finish this problem. All right, so here's the answer for all that information. Here's the graph. Pause the video if you need more time to look at all this.